Welcome back, everybody, to Books by ADRIAN Author Platform. This is the podcast episode for this week. Together with me is Collective Tales once again from a live stream Sunday this week. Just make sure that you guys hit the like, comment on this video, subscribe if you're not subscribed already. And if you are listening to the audio only versions on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a review, especially on Apple Podcasts. Giving us a 5-star and a review is how you can best help this podcast move up in Apple Podcasts. And that's the big one. All right, y'all. That's the business. Let's bring our guests right back out here. All right. Elizabeth, welcome back. Jonathan, welcome back. How was live stream Sunday for you guys? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, yes, it was so fun.
I especially like the chat questions. They always come up with some really good questions.
Yeah, there were some great questions on there.
Yeah. I'm really glad that you guys did it. I'm especially glad that we were able to talk so much about, your publishing house. I know that Jonathan has been on the show before as an author. Elizabeth, we're going to have you on for next season to talk about your own writing as well. Do you guys put out works on your own outside of your publishing house?
Yes, we do. We both have like our own separate stuff as well. We just try to submit to different anthologies and just our own stuff as well. Getting stuff online, like I've posted things on different blog sites like Medium. I just barely started it, so I have barely any views on there, but I sometimes will add stuff. But just getting things out there, I think, is really important.
Yeah, so we both have had things published in other anthologies. I sold a story recently to the Night's End podcast.
Oh, the Night's End is, yeah.
And I think Liz, you've published a story there, and they had you guest star in time.
Yeah.
I had a story I sold to who was the other one? Well, I also have a story was published on the horrific podcast. I think Liz has one on there too. And then I've got a story that's being published it's called Beyond Beehives.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah, that one's going to be great.
And hold on, where's the other one?
Yeah, you guys got lots of stuff going on. I like
it. I know. I was telling someone the other day. I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm a published author," and they're like, "No, you're not." I'm like, "Yeah, I am. Go check out my Goodreads." There's like
what?
12 books on there or something. What?
Someone said you weren't?
Well, no, they was just it was like, "Oh no," just not believing it. So I had to show them, prove it.
It's always fun when you can fan out your books
I'm
a deck of cards.
Oh, look at this giant thing.
Yeah, Liz has one published in Shadowed Hourglass, and she's in The Witching Time of Night. I've got some poems published in...
These are some nice covers. Let me see that Witching Time of Night again. That's a really nice cover. Yeah.
Yeah, it's with a nonprofit group, the Salt City Genre Writers. I really like when people put an emphasis on covers. Because, you can have a good story that has a bad cover, but it's so that's part of the marketing strategy, right? Is to have a good cover. Because people totally judge a book by its cover.
Absolutely.
And you should
Whoever said not to, it was an idiot, because you totally should.
I know. It's those cover designers deserve to have their story, their art judged.
Yeah, that in and of itself is an art form and part of it. It's one of those things where people think that a novel is just the writing inside the pages, and it's really not. The entire thing is a work of art that a group of people has put out, just like a movie is. A movie is not just the story of this character doing a thing. It's an entire work of art with music and sound effects and visual effects and all kinds of stuff. So it's
an experience,
and all of it meant to tell the story. You know what I'm saying? All the way down to the posters for the film. It all is part of telling the story to the audience. So yeah, man, when it comes to books, for sure, the cover is a huge part of it. I always get sad when I pick up a book and I'm like, oh, look at this cover. Who did this?
I know. I hate when I'm like, oh, it has this kind of cover. It's not going to be a good story. I really try not to be like that, but it just shows the author's probably not they're not putting the amount of effort into it. Like
Right.
when it's a bad cover, they're probably not going to get a lot of editing, or it's just there's a lot of stuff involved with that I have my own inner judgment on. Like, but
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
just
I mean, that's a good point. Like, if you treat your cover that way, what else are you treating that way? You're
yeah.
True. Yeah.
Because the cover is the most important thing, I think, outside of editing and stuff. Like the cover is the very first thing you see. It is the thing. It's the booth babe.
Yeah.
that movie.
And
Yeah.
that and I know what you mean, man. I've run into people like that as well who are very excited about the book that they wrote and the story that they're telling, and that's great. But then you're like, okay, so who'd you go for your cover designer? It's like, oh, I just threw something together in Photoshop, threw it out there. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
it's the same when people tell me they didn't go to a professional editor. When people tell me that, I'm like, unless you are one yourself,
Even
then, you should really have another set of eyes. Like, it's bananas. how folks
I've
don't
been a
see.
professional editor for, I don't know, 15 years maybe. I would still have a professional editor, Liz probably, edit my book, because one thing about being a professional editor is that you're going to miss your own.
Yeah.
You become blind to it. That's
Yeah.
like, I mean, Stephen King talks about how you need to put your story down for a month or something before you like revisit it and like edit it and stuff, because I mean, even then you don't have completely fresh eyes on things, but it still is fresher, and having another person is just the best way to go.
Or in the case of Stephen King, right, he threw it in the trash and then had his wife pull it out of the trash and fix it for him.
Yes,
That was
exactly.
Carrie, right? That was Carrie.
Yeah.
He almost
literally
threw
away.
out Carrie. Wow, Jesus, that's
Yeah.
one of his biggest books. Yeah, man, it's so interesting to me how some folks just wing it like that. It's just so crazy to
Yeah.
me. The same whether it's with the cover, with the edit, whatever it is. I'm just like, this is supposed to be your baby. Why wouldn't you like obsess over every little thing? It's so funny because I see all these like unboxing videos of like first time authors getting their book for the first time, and they're crying and they're so emotional, and I totally get that, because
Yeah.
I probably will eventually cry over the fact that my book is real. But that first time, I'm gonna be like inspecting every angle of it, every page, measuring out the formatting. I'm gonna be looking for
Yes.
every typo. How do
As
the
you
pages like
should.
sit, the texture of the page. I'm gonna obsess over everything, and to me, it's all part of the story. It's all part of the story, down to the type of paper that you choose
Oh, of
for your
course.
book.
Paper
You know what I'm
is.
saying?
Oh, I know exactly. Jonathan and I sometimes have a little thing on the paper, but the paper is, and like the formatting, like sometimes like if you look at chapter headings on certain stories, sometimes it like just enhances the story. Like maybe it's like a really fantasy based story, and suddenly the font is like coming into the wording, or something like that, where
Sure.
it's like maybe it's like trees or something. And no, I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm
I
OCD.
have.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, one thing I really want to like explore in a future anthology is adding in little art here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Like,
Yeah.
I was just talking to a friend the other day, because they were looking at our book and they were like, "Oh, it reminds me of those scary stories to tell in the dark." And like, which is a comment we get a lot about our cover.
Hmm.
And I'm like, one thing I loved about those scary stories book is the art when I was a kid, and so I think that would be one way to enhance the stories.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a collection of Dunk and Egg stories from George R. R. Martin, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. It has I think four stories in there, and in between each one, there's these beautiful like hand pencil like drawing of the characters and the places and stuff, and it's just like beautiful like that. I'm right there with you, man. Like just a nice little piece of art after every other chapter or so. If it's a big book or if it's a short story, just one for each. If you can, like, if you have I've always wanted to put out a short story collection myself and have the story begin on the right page, but on the left one have a work of art, like sort of emulating that story. Even if you haven't read the story yet, just looking at the work of art will entice you into reading it. Like,
Exactly.
this sounds a lot of fun. And to be able to work with an artist to like, again, continue telling the story in another like piece of the medium like that is beautiful. I have an edition of Neil Gaiman's American Gods. It's this beautiful,
I love that book.
big hard. Oh, it's one of my favorites.
Mhm.
And it's this big like beautiful hardcover, and because of the subject material, it's made to look like a Bible basically. Like the pages are very thin, almost translucent, like a Bible is, and like the edges of the paper all have like that silver finish to them. It's just like so nice. You feel like you're reading a Bible when you're reading American Gods. Like that's. And by the way, that's like a 17th edition or whatever it is, and I still find typos in that book.
Yeah, and you're always going to find stuff like that.
Absolutely. Like I always want to remind authors out there who are obsessing over every little typo in their book or whatever, chill, man. Neil Gaiman, one of the greatest writers of our time, has gone through so many edits of this thing, and there are still typos in there. His editors are some of the best editors out there, and there's still typos in there. Everybody needs to relax on the typo. It's fine.
So I had this editing professor, and he would tell us this story about how, whenever they publish something, like people would be like, "Oh, did you know you had this mistake on this page or whatever?" And he would say to them, because he's so sick of these comments, "Oh, you found it." We leave those in to see if people.
Oh, it's a little Easter egg. Nice
Yeah,
job.
you found it. Good job for you. You found it. You're like, you left it in for people to...
He's a genius. I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
Actually, that's intentional. That's the way that word is spelled in my book.
Yeah.
Like when Tolkien chose to spell the plural of elf as elves, and everybody all his editors kept sending it back to him like, this is a typo. I was like, no, it's not. Like that's how I spell elves for Lord of the Rings.
I thought it was dwarves. I just read about that.
Well, it might have been dwarf and dwarves. Yeah, it might have.
I'm on a Lord of the Rings meme page, so there's always
yeah.
I just read about that. Yeah, I guess.
That's the good stuff, man. That's the good. Let me see. Are there any questions that I didn't get to during live stream Sunday? Let me take a look.
Well, I will make a comment since we're talking about covers and Lord of the Rings. I have the Lord of the Rings books that have the movie pictures on them, and I hate it. I want to get a nice set.
I have that same edition. I have that same edition. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mind it because I love the movies.
A long time ago, when the movies were coming out, and I'm like, this is ugly. I don't like it. I hate it.
Yeah, if it's just like a still shot from the movie, it just looks terrible. It's like horrible.
Yeah. My mom has this old one from like the 60s or something, and it's just like a paperback, and it's got a really beautiful old cover. Actually, I think that might be mine now. I think she might have given it to me.
Nice. Oh, you got a lot back there. You see that?
I know. Since I moved to Wales, I'm like, I have quite a few books compared to other people, but I only have maybe only 20 books. I mean, and that's like a lot if you kind of think about it. Maybe there's 30 because I had school classes, if you're talking about.
Well, the same thing happened to me. I moved from Orlando to Buffalo. I took all my stuff with me, but then when I moved back from Buffalo to Orlando, I didn't have as much of space and everything. I had to leave stuff behind. I had to give away a bunch of my books to my friends, like sell some at a like my collection went down to almost nothing, and I'm starting again. So
it
sad.
Hurts.
Comics. I sold all my comics, all my trades.
I'm actually, I love comics. I'm gonna start writing for some comic websites here soon. Actually,
you're in Orlando, right?
Anything you can talk about? What kind of stuff? Oh no, now I'm in Gainesville, but yeah.
I'm going to Orlando in 2 weeks.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. No, not with that just yet. That one's I'm still in the training, so I don't know if I'm allowed to really talk about it. But
copy that.
It's
well, cool. I hope it's
a very new thing. Yeah.
All right. Do you guys struggle with writer's block? How do you fight it if you do? Do you even believe in it? A lot of authors don't, like me.
Well, I think the thing with writer's block is that it's a lot of times it's either you're overthinking it or there's three things.
You're burnt
either
out.
Overthinking it, you're fatigued, or you just don't believe a part of your story. For me, most of the time, I think I am like in a fatigued point. Like there was actually, so with school, I essentially have to write 3,000. Well, my goal, I don't always hit it, but my goal is to write 3,000 words a day. If I get 2,000, that's fine. I'm happy with it. But it's like 3 different projects. And it does fatigue me a lot. So if there is a point sometimes where I'm like, why am I just not creative, where I can't think about it. Actually, even though it like pains me, I like take an entire day, maybe even 2 days, to do nothing with writing. And that's saying a lot because I'm a little bit of a workaholic. So I like have to force it, but doing that just like will completely change my view. Or maybe I start writing some poetry, something completely different, and then I just like stop caring about, like, because it's like a stress thing, right? You're blocked because you're stressed, and however you got to that stress, that it inhibits creativity. So you just have to get out of that stress.
Yeah. What about you, John?
Well, I mean, okay, so I don't know if I have a block in the sense that like I can't write anything, but I do feel like there's times when I can't write something good, or I can't think of a good idea, or if I'm trying to write something new. So there's that lack of inspiration. I hate forcing myself to sit down and write something if it's not going to be good.
Yeah.
Like sometimes with my book that I never finished, it's like, oh, I got to write a chapter between here and here about whatever, and I'm like, ugh, I got nothing. But like, okay, so last night, I think I was messaging Liz here about.
It was like 1 a.m. and I was like,
'cause we
let's
have
do a
this weird-
writing sprint. It was
like a
7 a.m.
couple-
for me.
Yeah, there's a few times during the day when we're both awake, and so like we come up with something. She's like, I'm gonna do a writing sprint. And I don't like NaNoWrimo. I hate what it represents, which is like cramming an entire book into a month. It sounds like it's like too much pressure. But I thought, it'd be fun if I wrote like a little flash fiction story every day. No pressure. If I don't do it, who cares? But like, and so I didn't do any yesterday. I was like tired. I worked all day, and she's like, let's do a writing sprint. I'm like, all right, fine. And then I end up writing a cute.
Yay! So you still hit your goal.
Story about a little baby, a devil demon baby, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I did that. Baby.
And I didn't feel inspired, but sitting down and forcing myself to write something, I became inspired.
Yeah, writing sprints really helped me. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, you're okay. Go ahead.
Oh no, I just said writing sprints really helped me, because if I'm like, sometimes I get really distracted, and that's the reason why I'm having writer's block, which is not really writer's block, it's just me going on Reddit or something. So if I like force myself to be like, okay, for 20 minutes, I just can't look at my phone. I have to write, and then suddenly words flow, and it's a lot easier.
I think, and I don't know if other writers are this way, but I respond really well to this external validation.
Yeah.
This is why it's good to have Liz around.
Artists in general. Yeah, for sure.
Because, just Liz being like, oh, let's do this thing. And then like, you did it. Yay. Even if it's not good or not, So.
Yeah. Well, on the topic of NaNoWrimo real quick, I don't participate in it either, only because I've been working on my novel for quite some time now. And like I'm focused on that. But I totally hear where you're coming from, where like, it doesn't sound good, the idea of cramming an entire book, writing an entire book into 1 month. On the other hand, there are people who thrive under the pressure of a deadline, and there's just something about that whole like, I gotta get it done, that will help them. And they're, in my eyes, they're not cramming a whole book into 1 month, they're cramming a first draft into 1 month.
Yes,
and you can take however long you want to work on that second draft and edit it and polish it. You could come out of NaNoWrimo with a fairly decent book if you just know that what you're doing is your first draft, and your first draft is supposed to be garbage. Like, it's just
I'll clarify that. Like, I'm not against anyone doing it. I'm against it for me. But like, I'm very supportive. Every year, I have friends that do it, and I'm like, I'm the first one to be like, yeah, do it. You can do it. But I also don't want them to feel like they have to, because I've tried to do it, and I'm like, this is so much pressure. Why am I torturing myself? This is not,
Yeah.
So.
See, for me,
like, I'll be a cheerleader unless you don't want it, and then I'll be like, hey, it's cool to quit. Quitting is the best, Yeah,
it's okay to quit. Just quit. Just come over here and quit.
Quitting feels fantastic.
Yeah, man. And to kind of like close out thoughts on the whole writer's block thing. In my eyes, I think it was you, Liz, a moment ago, who was talking about like how it's all like different aspects of like, either you're burnt out, or you're blocked for this reason or that. The idea for me is identify exactly what it is that you're stuck on, so that you can shift gears. And so for example, when folks tell me that they're writing a novel but they're suffering from writer's block, I go, that means you didn't write an outline. So go back and do your outline.
Yes. Okay.
If you have your outline, there's no excuse for writer's block if you do your outline. Because if you get to a chapter and you have no idea what to write, guess what? Go to your outline and it'll tell you what to write. And then you can just write that. I don't accept writer's block as an excuse for writing a novel, because all it means is you've reached the end of your pantser and you need to go back and do a little bit of plotting, man. You need to go back and do your outline. On the other hand, if you are starting a brand new idea and you have no ideas flowing, that's a whole different thing. That's something you got to get your creative juices flowing. You know, maybe you got to step away from it. Maybe you got to walk around for a while. Maybe you need to read something outside your genre to click things, you know, into gear. Or maybe you should do some free writing. You know, just sit down and clack the keys and don't stop for 45 minutes. And even if it's all nonsense, at least you got words down and it's getting the juices flowing. And before you know it, there's an idea that pops out of there. There's all kinds of little things. Sorry, go ahead, John.
Oh no, I'm just, you know, you're attacking.
You were having visceral reactions over there.
No, you sound like Liz, and I'm like, how dare you right now call me out in front of Liz? No, I am a pantser, and you know what? It works great when you're writing flash fiction, okay? So, and poetry. But
how's that novel coming along, Mr. Pantser?
It's outlined, all right? I just don't want to fill in the little bitty parts.
No, the thing is I totally agree with it working with flash fiction and poetry, and I think that there is
Absolutely.
something to you know, when you haven't like pants away if you have like inspiration. But for me, I really do need plotting, and one of the projects I'm working on is a biography for my grandpa. And there are times where like it is well, it's heavily research based, but I'm trying to make it like not just like a textbook. I'm trying to make it enjoyable. So there's like this weird like balance act I have to do. And sometimes I get like blocked in like certain sections, but I don't like writer's block. I think that's like a dirty word kind of, because I don't think it's a block. I think it's just,
agreed.
I need just like plotting a little bit more, or I need, there's just something I'm not getting.
There's something missing. Yeah. You just have to find what that missing element is.
Exactly. And so what I just do is I'll just like highlight that section and then just carry on and write. Like, you'll get back to that part. Like, don't even worry.
And Jonathan, I'll give you this. If you truly need to stick to your horrific pantsing ways, here's my advice. My advice is this: if you don't want to do an outline for your whole novel, no problem. But when you come to a chapter, outline your chapter. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're struggling with, you know, you mentioned earlier, I have to put in a chapter in between this and this, and I have no ideas. Outline that bad boy, dude. Like work on it like in a free writing kind of sense, and get a nice outline out of that. Because one that works for me is the Snowflake Method. You know, people like, you don't need to, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but you don't need to build an entire novel out of the Snowflake Method. You can use it to build a paragraph. You can use it to build a chapter. So what I'll do is, okay, this chapter is about, you know, the hero, you know, falling to the death or whatever it is, right? And I have no ideas for how to make this happen, but I know that that's what the chapter is about. So I'll spend a good hour working on this one sentence summary of what is this chapter really about? What's at the core of this chapter? And then once I have that sentence, I'll turn that sentence into a paragraph. And then I'll turn that paragraph into 5 paragraphs. And I'll turn that 5 paragraphs into 25 paragraphs. Before you know it, I have a whole chapter, you know, and it all came from one core idea. There's different ways, man. Like pull the ideas out of the ether. Like,
you know, people have been trying to get me in on this method my whole life. You know, give
it a shot. It works.
It's not that I don't see the value in it. It's just like, I don't know. I got ADD. Maybe that's the problem. But like, here's how I wrote.
So do
the novel
I.
is really long, and it's
pretty
not
sure
a plot. I know exactly where everything's supposed to go. But I would be in the shower, and I'd have an idea for like a random chapter or an anecdote or something, and I don't even know where it's going to go in my book. But I'll write it down, and then maybe I'll add to it later, and then I'll find a spot and just shove it in. I'll be.
I feel like we all do that. I do that at least, and you know,
that's why I wrote my whole book.
That's not.
It's long.
I can't. You're giving me anxiety. Now listen. I completely forgot what I was going to say. Never mind. Now, what about imposter syndrome? How do you guys feel? Like, you guys struggle with imposter syndrome at all? Is that a thing for you? I know it's a thing for me, but it's another thing that I feel is as misunderstood as writer's block.
Sometimes
and I think it's something that's good for you.
I don't think once you get your first bestseller, I feel like you don't really worry about it as much anymore. least for me.
I don't know. I think it's the same thing with like when I'm yeah, when I teach people as well, like there's this thing like I do have like a presentation where it's like you'll know you're an expert, you know that you're doing this thing, you know you have all of the knowledge for this, you can answer any of the questions. Same with like when you're writing, you know that this is your world, this is what you're putting out. But there and once you get into the flow of it, it does become easier and you're like, oh yeah, I um you understand me, you listen to me and that sort of thing. But there is that like moment, I think, for me at least, where it's just like, well, why do you care? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, and
Yeah.
I think it's a real thing, and I think it's society. A lot of people have it, and I hope that people can change that. Like I'm trying to change it in me, and I hope that I can like rub off on other friends and like have them change it as well, because we all are here, even if you're a new beginner, like a new writer, like you're still trying, you still have this ambition, you still are worth, you have value in the writing community. And so there's nothing wrong with you being in the writing community, you should be in it. And so it's just like that whole aspect of feeling like you're a pariah or something is it's wrong, right? It's everyone deserves a chance.
Well, it's interesting because I always look at it as an aspect of being a new writer that people are not prepared for, which is that most authors, most accomplished authors, and most highly respected authors will all tell you the same thing. Steal. When you're new, steal from everybody. If you like the way Neil Gaiman writes, try to write like Neil Gaiman. If you like the way George Martin writes, try to write like George Martin. And by trying to write like all of your favorite writers, you will find your style. You will find yourself in your art eventually. But at first, you're going to feel like an imposter. You're going to feel like you're just pretending to be George Martin or pretending to be Neil Gaiman. I keep mentioning those two because those are mine. But it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, man, that's the whole point. When George Martin started out, he was trying to be Tolkien. Like everybody starts out that way and then they find themselves. Imposter syndrome, I think, is a healthy part of the growth of an author. You just got to know that it's a healthy part of the growth of an author and just accept it for what it is and not let it like weigh you down. Like, I'm not a real writer. Yeah, you are. You're fine. Just keep writing. You'll be fine.
If you're writing, you're a writer. That's how I feel. But yeah, I think we've all experienced imposter syndrome at some time or other. I mean, if I get a bunch of rejections in a row, then I'm like, I don't know if I have imposter syndrome, but something. Liz has got to comfort me and tell me.
Yeah, you'll be bummed out. Yeah, sure. Like,
I'll be like, well, I'm
being
quitting.
rejected,
I'm
but
I had a good run and that's over.
It's all over. Yeah. Just retire now.
Here's one of my fears though about it. So like, because I had some stories that were bought and were well received, and I had a good review published and a thing for that pony story that I wrote. Like, that doesn't mean that anything I write from here till the day I die is good, right?
So what? In other words, what if it was a fluke? What if I accidentally wrote a good story?
No, that doesn't. Yeah, no, Jonathan, you're a good writer. Like, don't even. Yeah, I feel.
Tell me, please. I need to hear
it. No, I feel like it's just one of those things, right? Like, I feel like, sure, everyone's gonna write garbage if they don't try, but it's you're taking inspiration, you're stealing from these authors. I mean, obviously, you don't want to plagiarize, but it's that whole thing of
obviously.
I hope that people steal from mine, where like in the sense of like I hope they get inspiration from me, that would be like the biggest honor. Like that's the highest form, right? Is mimicry. That's the highest form of compliment.
There's a reason why authors and storytellers of all kinds will compare their work to other things. Oh, if you like The Matrix, you should check out my book. Even though it's not a movie, you're letting them know if you like this, you might like this because I liked that when I wrote this. You know what I mean? Like, it's all part of it.
Well, and that's an interesting thing. Like when you're doing, when you're going to a literary agent, you have to talk about your comparables. Mm-hmm. Like, what is your story like? You have to have those ready, or they're not even going to consider you. And most writers or most new writers don't necessarily know that, and it's a huge thing.
Along with what we were talking about a little bit earlier is, fear of rejection, I think, is a big obstacle for a lot of writers. I mean, I think I still deal with that sometimes, but and fear of failure. And I think we should just embrace that. You're gonna get rejected. It's part of it.
Yeah.
You're gonna fail at some point. Like, even all the best writers are all experienced it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, and it's just, I mean, there's, I know one author who, he's now the president of the League of Utah Writers, this nonprofit Utah group, and so like I'm president of one of the smaller groups. Like if you had heard from the live, just so there's not a confusion, but he's over like the whole company, like the nonprofit company, and what he likes to do is he will just submit to all these different like anthologies, and he has a goal. I can't remember the specific number, but he has a goal to hit a certain amount of rejections, not even acceptance, but rejections.
Yeah.
And so if he doesn't get those rejections, like say it might be 30 rejections, and if he doesn't get that, he has to keep submitting. And then once he gets all of those, he takes a break and then like kind of reassesses things, and then he does it again. And so
what
you're in that
happens if he's
mindset,
trying to get 30 rejections, but he gets like 10 rejections and then an acceptance?
yeah, exactly. He'll get acceptances. Yeah.
Well, then he keeps getting accepted over and over again.
Yeah. What if everyone accepts all his? Yeah.
No, he does actually get quite a few rejections too. So it's just like one of those things. But
yeah, no, I hear a lot of writers talk about that too, about this whole like just keep submitting and keep getting rejections. It's good for you. Like it's just gonna make you better. It's gonna make you a better writer over time.
And it builds character. Being rejected actually really is healthy, even though we all hate it. There's this whole thing. It's a TED Talk where you should learn to be rejected. Like go up to a person and ask for the most ridiculous thing, and like, can I borrow a hand towel? Or, something dumb from some who wouldn't have a hand towel, right? They're gonna say no, and then it's just those small things that build up bigger, so then you can be comfortable with rejection.
Like building an immunity over time.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly.
Like a vaccine.
Yeah. Just small doses of rejection at a regular time.
Well, I mean, it is similar to dating, and in our society, it's usually the men that do the asking. But like, I talk to a lot of guys. They're like, "I'm too afraid of rejection." I'm like, "I've been rejected a bajillion times," but
he says proudly.
Yeah. And then I got married, and then I had a hot girlfriend. But like, none of that would have happened.
After you got married, you had a hot girlfriend after you got married?
Well, after we got divorced. But
no, that makes sense. The timeline is adding up now. I got it.
Yeah. I'm just talking about the successes, not the failure parts. But the thing is, like, I'm confident with that part of my life because I went through a lot of rejections when I was younger, and like I became immune to it. It doesn't even like bother me. I'm not fazed by it at all. And it's the same with writing. I've been rejected so many times that I know that doesn't mean anything. It's still kind of like if I get a bunch of rejections in a row, then it kind of bothers me. But at some point in my life, I'm gonna just not care anymore.
Yeah, eventually you're just gonna be like, "What?
Yeah,
you're rejecting
that's how that
me?"
goes. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for the rejection.
You know what? You don't know anything. Shut up.
Yeah.
Although I've gotten some nice rejection notes too from people that are like, "Oh, I love this story, but it's just not a good fit," or whatever. Like,
See, and that's the thing too, is people need to remember sometimes you're getting rejected not because of the quality of your story, but because it just didn't hit the theme, or like I got rejected.
We were talking about earlier. It doesn't fit. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, there was one anthology I got rejected from just because there was a bigger name who had a similar story to mine. And so they didn't pick mine because of that. But who cares? I'll revamp mine and submit it somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Sounds about right. All right, guys. Do you have any like closing thoughts for our people at home? Any challenges for our writers? Any parting words for us?
Well, I would suggest, and this is some advice that I first picked up from who's the guy that wrote Ender's Game? Whatever his name is. Orson Scott Card in one of his writing books. And that
was gonna kill me.
Yeah, Orson Scott Card. So you should write short stories because one, it's easy. It's an easy way to get practice, and you can actually finish, and you feel accomplished every time you finish one. And
then the end a bunch of times, right?
Yeah. And it's a lot easier, I think, to get a short story published than it is to get a novel published.
Yeah.
And so it's a good way to get some publications on your name.
For sure.
I think a lot of people just jump into the novel. I think that's a mistake. I think
No, you have to build a resume. You know, I mean, when we accept stories, we're more likely to accept stories from authors who have at least had some kind of experience. They don't have to be like a professional at all, but if they've had some kind of experience, it's really nice because it's like, oh, they know how to work with an editor.
Yeah, I mean, that's good for our marketing too, because
Yeah,
if they have a
exactly.
following of people who read their novel, then
Yeah, that's more.
sales for us too.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, guys, thank you so very much for coming on both of my shows today.
Yeah, of course.
You've been lovely guests, and this has been a wonderful experience. I hope it was so for you guys as well.
Yeah.
For everybody at home, the links for Collective Tales are in the description, but down below in the downstairs. And if you guys want to get some short stories published, head on over to Collective Tales and see if you make the cut on one of their upcoming collections. I know that you guys said that Collective Fantasy is coming out, but you still have a couple open for, what was it? Collective
Chaos.
Chaos.
And then
Collective
Collective
Humanity.
Humanity. And the Collective Humanity is a nonprofit.
Collective
Anthology.
Humanity. Right on. All right. Sounds good. Everybody, happy writing. Go get your stuff published. Leave a like, comment down below, subscribe, notification bell, all that stuff. You guys know what to do. All right, man. Right on, writers, and we're out.